you tired of the daily hustle and bustle, the endless traffic just to get your little one to a good school? GMS Snap Bingo offers a unique blend of academic excellence with a holistic child development in both nursery and primary. We provide a national curriculum with an international touch. Enroll your child today by visiting our campus along Trinity College, Dabigo Road. GMS Snap Bingo, where every child's potential is a reality. Because we care.
Welcome to another week of Second Take with IDK. The pleasure is all ours. Isma Dakabachigongo, the star of the show, and my name is Mebo Kebirunji, I have the honor to host Isma. Thank you for liking, subscribing, and sharing. Do keep the comments coming in. We will be reading a few out, possibly a little bit later. Isma, welcome back from the Eid break. The Eid, it happened to be on a Friday, so we had a long weekend. How was mom, Chengeda, the rest of your family?
Yeah, thank you. It is a celebration for family, and I spent that with my family and a few friends. I'd like to thank all our friends who came to spend Eid with us. I'll start with the former Victoria Pearls captain, or the national women's cricket team captain, Naomi Kayondo. Thank you for always being a part of our family and choosing to be there. And actually, Brandon did show up for Eid, and yeah, he arrived late, but in time for the food, which was the very important part of his plan for the day. Yeah, but everyone that we invited, all our friends within the family who showed up, I'm very, very glad that you did.
Okay, so the month is over, hopefully our sins are forgiven and we continue with life.
Yeah, we should continue in the same vein because Ramadan is like a school. You go to learn and then come out a better person and do a bit of the same. If you haven't been able to fast the entire 30 days, there's an opportunity between now and the next Ramadan to do those days again, to make good of those days. If you're able, there's also the 6 days in the first 30 days after Ramadan, which is the month of Shawwal. You could be able to do what is called sitat, those 6 days. So if you're Muslim and you think you can, please do. We're also closing in on Easter.
Yes.
Yesterday someone asked that why doesn't Easter come exactly 40 days from the start of Lent? That when Lent ends today,
you count 40 days.
Yeah, when Lent starts today and you count 40 days, then it's Easter. And because a person was Muslim, I don't think they understand it. Neither did I even bother. But does Easter actually fall on the 41st day?
No,
it
apparently
doesn't.
They don't consider weekends during Easter. I also got to know that a little bit later. So, but to all those Christians who are watching us, keep on keeping on. Now, we've talked about this time as a time of reflection. I'm just wondering, have CAF had some time to reflect and rescind their decision? Any news from them?
No, they are not. I don't think they're able to do a recession of those decisions. I don't think they can rescind them because their process is now exhausted. In the aftermath of the disciplinary committee choosing to retain the result that Senegal had won the AFCON, and thereafter the appeals board deciding that the result that was decided by the disciplinary board was wrong, and they decided to overturn it and hand Morocco the AFCON because Senegal were adjudged to have forfeited the game. The process now with CAF is done. So what we know is that Senegal, the Lions of Teranga, are going to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. But also something that I saw is one of the CAF Executive Committee members who goes by the name Augustine Senghor was on the BBC News Day on Friday morning. And while he's part of CAF and is a former president of the Senegalese FA, disagreeing with the decision and calling upon Africa to reject what he described as an abject decision taken by CAF. So you get the feeling, you get the sense that part of the people in the CAF ExCom could be divided, because it's very easy now to describe Senghor as biased because it comes from Senegal, but that also doesn't, by the statements he made on the BBC also show that CAF is not in one place, yeah, in terms of the decision-making process. So there's a bit of a division there. Then two, I also saw the CAF president, Dr. Patrice Motsepe, giving all kinds of excuses or making a case that he's not even involved with the decision-making process because he's been accused of being in bed with the Moroccans over the past many years. Then there was all this, you'd call it a public relations campaign, undertaken by the CAF Communications Department, led by Laxo September, who was on SuperSport the other night. And all of them actually ended up in all the media houses where they were sent to make a case that this decision was taken by an independent body of CAF, and the CAF president, Motsepe, was not involved. In fact, in one of the communications, Laxo September actually said that the decision taken, Motsepe would only receive it at the same time like we do, like all of us do, that he only receives a decision by email. So there's been an attempt, and for me, which also sounds very absurd, where there isn't any individual responsibility with a man that is a CAF president.
Yeah.
It's a case of sometimes that happens in our politics or in leadership in our country, Uganda, where there's a tendency to blame everyone else except the leader. Now, in the situation of awarding Morocco the African title, I've seen the CAF Communications Department try to exonerate Dr. Patrice Motsepe and make this a CAF decision where he has no say. And I do not believe that's the right way to go about it. I think if I hit a pothole and lost a shock absorber, my claims would go straight up to plot 1 in Tebe. It cannot be about only the councillor in Chira or in Natete or wherever. There has to be collective responsibility, I think, with everyone. And that's one of the things that I've sensed that has happened over the past week since the decision was made. And I don't think that's the right line to buy into. But we've got to also have faith that the process that Senegal have undertaken is to go to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. So they are giving justice every chance. And that's what I think you've got to do in situations like this. Because while you might disagree with the decision, it's also never a good thing to throw stones. We are trying to call ourselves civilized, and we are trying to fight that thing when you travel in Europe and you're asked whether you live with a lion or reside in a tree or probably eat uncooked food because you come from Africa. So you've got to give all these processes a chance.
A chance. You said that they were calling upon Africa to reject. What would that rejection look like for the Uganda Cranes? How would FUFA reject the results and maybe liaise with the Kenya Confederate, their head of football, Tanzania, South Africa? How would we all get together as Africa?
I have the exact words of the CAF ExCom member, Augustine Senghor, and what he exactly said. Here it is, and I would quote, "Football is fair play. Football is played on the field and not in offices. What has happened with CAF is unacceptable. When you see a committee taking such a decision in violation of our rules, in violation of the FIFA laws of the game, to take the trophy and give it to Morocco, I think it is something very abject. We have to denounce it and reject the decision." He does not give African countries, I think, the option of what they should do.
Okay.
And I've had people who have called for a boycott, starting with Senegal. I do not think Senegal will undertake that route where they eventually boycott the AFCON. Even if the Court of Arbitration for Sport rules against them, it's highly unlikely that they'll go that route. I think what he's calling for is to reject for African countries, I think, to come out with statements
Okay.
calling out CAF and saying you are wrong. But I think that is very, very unlikely.
Yeah, to happen.
Because that would involve presidents of the respective FAs either signing a joint communique or signing their own communications as individual countries. I don't think that will happen, considering that these days I sense with football, the sense where there is opposition from within. The way people want football politics to be handled, the same way this other national politics is that everyone who is inside is actually inside. Yeah? Teri asigala wabweru. Is that they share the loot and there's a relative collective responsibility within the football circles. And maybe you could also add, if you're very selfish, is that this CAF president, Patrice Motsepe, is the first to pay FA presidents a salary. And they are paid, I think, in excess of $50,000 a year for their own expenses, money that they can spend on whatever they choose. And CAF lately funds teams quite a bit. They give FA some money. So it's highly unlikely that federation presidents would want to start a war or to steer a conversation against CAF or even against the person that is a CAF president. I think it's very highly unlikely. So while Augustine Senghor is appealing to the continent, it does not sound like there's anyone who is lending him an ear.
Oh, okay. Let's move to Europe and talk about the Carabao Cup final. What happened to Arsenal? What went wrong from them? And you know, last week we talked about the midfield, we talked about the forwards, we talked about the goalkeeper. Is that where it went wrong for them?
That's one area. And probably 80% of Arsenal's defeat could be attributed to the goalkeeper, because the game was goalless before Kepa Arrizabalaga commits that mistake. So he hands Manchester City the initiative, and after that, there was nothing more to come. But also, in addition, I thought Arsenal were very, very poor, very negative, fear to take risks. Probably an embodiment of one of the things that everyone has talked about, Mikel Arteta. When I saw the two lineups, I thought, first of all, Man City were imbalanced. I've not agreed with situations where Pep Guardiola plays with only two largely central midfielders, that is Rodri and Bernardo. And I think it's part of the reason why he was battered at the Bernabeu in the Champions League the previous week by Real Madrid. He goes with the same. And chooses, of course, there's a lot of attacking intent when you have Haaland, Semenyo, you have Ryan Cherki, and then you have Jeremy Doku. There's a lot of attacking intent there, but Arsenal did not challenge Manchester City in the areas where I thought Man City could have been weak or could have been vulnerable. One of those was that area in the midfield. The other is that they have two centre-backs who have not had a lot of minutes this season in Kusanov and Nathan Ake. So Arsenal did not challenge them in those areas. So I thought Mikel Arteta was very negative, too negative to play cup final.
He assumed, did he make too many assumptions? Or?
I think it's part of his character. The manner in which Arsenal showed up on the day is part of what we've come to know Mikel Arteta for. Arsenal does not take too many risks. Perhaps the way they played, they were hoping to win the game via a corner kick, via a free kick. They were not really going to win the game from open play. Then, on what should be one of the bigger games of the season, Bukayo Saka goes missing. So does Declan Rice. Then thereafter, what is left for the Arsenal to do? I thought, okay, Man City were physical. Leandro Trossard early in the game. Bernardo Silva picked as many as 2 fouls on him. And thereafter, Leandro Trossard went missing. But these are the occasions when you start to question the ability and the person that Bukayo Saka is, because this is a cup final. Arsenal do not win many. Arsenal have won 1 trophy in the last 9 years, and they've not won any trophy of significance in the last 6, which was the FA Cup back in 2020 in Mikel Arteta's first season. So thereafter, when you walk into a final, either you blame the players for not showing up and not understanding the occasion, or then you pick Mikel Arteta's head and put it on a chopping board. Because in the end, the tactics are chosen by him, the selection is made by him. That's why I think part of the biggest debate today is about whether David Raya should have been in goal, considering that they partly lost because of keeper Arrizabalaga and the mistake that he made on that first goal. So there's a lot of X's and O's that Arsenal did not do right, but also you've got to give Pep Guardiola a lot of credit. He's been man a bit of pressure, written off. There are even many of us who think these are signs of the end. The manner in which they showed up for that cup final and playing on the front foot probably let Arsenal were only in the game for the first 15 minutes of the game, and thereafter it was entirely the Man City show for the rest of the 75. Playing on the front foot, pressing the ball high up the pitch, and playing with the kind of attitude that we know of a man who is drunk and hungry and a glutton for trophies. That this 40th trophy felt a bit like his first. The manner in which he celebrated
I
it,
think because of the
and the
pressure
manner
from
in which,
all around.
yeah,
and
there's
the
been a lot of
vibes.
yeah, there's been a lot of conversation about Pep Guardiola being finished and Man City being in transition. So he almost wanted to put on a show and a kind of statement. And he hasn't been this animated in recent weeks.
I actually, I know.
Yeah, he hasn't been this animated. And he actually even found his dancing shoes for that second goal. So there was a sense also of what this meant to Man City. You can't talk about Arsenal and what they did not do right, but also it felt like it meant so much to either Man City as a club or the players or Pep Guardiola as an individual. And I think the third option is, for me, was very, very important. Pep Guardiola really wanted to win. And if anyone has questioned the hunger, the quality of the team, I think he almost wanted to put on a show and push back on some of that criticism, and I think he did. And in that situation, you've got to give him all the credit.
So where does this leave the title race for the English Premier League?
Even I chose Arsenal to win the league
and I think
in August.
You had said if they win it, there's a high chance. No, I don't.
I actually said that they perhaps need to win the Carabao Cup for them to get that extra push. Yeah, that extra 1% for them to cruise to the league title. I also gave them to win the league title back in August. And in the weekend when they beat Everton and Man City drew against West Ham, I used this microphone to declare them champions, because I think Man City do not have in them the consistency to go and win 5-6 games in a row. After they've not done it, I have no evidence to present that this team, this Man City or present, has done that. But of course they've had a City side that has even won 18 games in a row. So it's totally different times. When you talk about the title race now, I think it might create a bit of self-doubt for the Arsenal. Remember, Man City have a game in hand. Yes, it's not points in hand, but imagine a situation where they beat Crystal Palace and also beat Arsenal, who will go to the Etihad later on in the season. Should be around April 19th. Then it's only the 3 points. Then the pressure really starts to show. So we have an entire fortnight to chew over this, because there's an international break that everyone can think it through. And of course, if you do not like banter or being bantered and you're an Arsenal fan, maybe avoid social media for this period. But once they return, and luckily they'll return with a game, I think, in the FA Cup against Southampton. City will be playing against Liverpool in the FA Cup quarterfinals. Then they'll play Champions League before they walk out for their next league game. Arsenal should be playing against Bournemouth, or one of those lower sides, the ones anywhere around 8th to the bottom of the league. So we probably need to watch them again in their next game before we make all these conclusions about whether this cup final loss is going to affect Arsenal and how much of it is going to lift Man City. Because for me, Man City have it in them to win 3-4 games in a row.
Yeah.
But to win the league, they might need to win 6 in a row. And for me, that's why I sense they no longer have it in this squad. But this for them to beat Arsenal in that cup final maybe gives them that lift and that kind of confidence they need, that they can actually win games when they need them.
Okay, so let's move and talk about the top 4 finish, you know. Liverpool were on the wrong end of Welbeck.
Yeah, Welbeck scoring twice. He's 11th. He's into double figures for the Premier League. Quite a number for a player who is 35, written off.
Yeah.
I never really appreciated from his time at United and then
yeah.
Arsenal, where he's been. But also an indictment on Liverpool.
But he seems very determined. You see a hunger in him.
There is. And sometimes when I make reference to players of his age, I always say it in Uganda that ompira guoma nyongo okuze. I think Dan Welbeck is enjoying his football much more than he did in his 20s, because now you're very much aware of yourself, your abilities, what you can do. You're not really trying out things that eventually don't come off and you look bad. And that's what I sense with him. And then you have a manager in Fabian Hasler who is within the same age group with Dan Welbeck. So there's a lot of mutual respect, not only from the coach but also from the team, from the players around. They see you as an experienced player. You're actually referred to as senior, and it's intended in a good way. It's the same way when in African culture you're called Muzei. It's supposed to mean a good thing. Of course, these days it may not. It's a bit honorable to be called Muzei. Sometimes it may not. These days it may not mean that. Yeah. But now you start to enjoy the game a bit more. But for me, the game itself is also a very bold indictment on Liverpool. One, this is the first time in 10 years that Liverpool have lost 10 league games. The last time they did so was 2015-2016, and that's when they lost 10, they had 2 coaches. Brendan Rodgers, who was sacked sometime in October, and then Jurgen Klopp when he had just come in. So this is an indictment on how poor Liverpool have been, but also how terrible the Ancelotti second season has been for him in that dugout. Secondly, there's one decision for which I cannot find an answer, even several hours after watching the game and reading and trying to roll my mind around it. Liverpool suffered an injury in that game to Hugo Ekitike, who was their only recognized centre forward or maybe consistent goal scorer. So what does Ancelotti do? He has Enrico Chiesa and Rio Ngumoho on the bench, out and out forwards who play in the front 3. He chooses to bring on Curtis Jones. So in that phase, Liverpool have 5 midfielders and no forward. Literally no forward. Okay, the forward that is on the pitch is Cody Gakpo, and he's playing in a central role where every time he's played there, he's failed dismally. But Ancelotti has run Gravenberch, has Alexis McAllister, has Florian Wirtz on the pitch, has Dominic Soboslai, and then brings on Curtis Jones. If you want to make a case for Ancelotti, please make one for him in that situation. Because he took away every kind of little thing that Liverpool could have done in the game. And I'm not even taking credit away from Brighton, because this was their 4th victory in a row. But by the time you play all these midfielders and no clear attacking player besides Cody Gakpo, I think then they stood no chance. And you notice they were dominated in the second half. Brighton could have scored more, and in the end, the win of the game could only have been Brighton. Now they further lose ground in the pursuit of the top 4, or what could be the top 5, depending on the Champions League coefficient, which currently is in favor of the English Premier League. Looks like they'll have 5 teams in Europe. But for me, those 10 losses in a single Premier League season just emphasizes how poor a season this has been for Liverpool.
Chelsea, what a welcome. Their first time to Stadium Hill Dickinson. Yeah, the new home for Everton. What a welcome.
Very rude. A very, very rude welcome. In the end, comfortably thumped. Thumped is the word.
3-0.
3-0. Beto scoring twice. The player born in Portugal and I think plays for Guinea-Bissau. So would probably call him African. His best goals ever taken. I was actually, I'm one of those who likes to look at players beyond the numbers, but I'm almost compelled to look at Beto's numbers because I know they are very, very, very poor. But just to emphasize how poor they are, I want to pull out some stats before I get to where exactly this guy is. And he has a lengthy name, Antonio. Oh, no, this is not the one I'm looking for. There's another Beto that came, and he's one that I watched play in his heyday, and he played for Portugal. I want to just get his 28. He scored 2 goals in that game. Beto has been at Everton since 2023. He's played 91 league games and scored only 17. Only 17 in 91. And he's a starting number 9. This he has been on 4 and got to 6 goals, I think, for this one. Yeah, he's got to 6 goals for the season. I think that emphasizes how poor perhaps Chelsea were. I saw an interview of Liam Rosini after the game saying that this is a case of one team taking their chances and the other not. But I think it was worse than that. I don't think Chelsea offered much.
Do you think fatigue from Europe?
What were they doing in Europe? Losing 8-2? Losing to PSG? They were not doing anything in Europe. No, they've just been a poor team. And Liam Rosinia is not helping with the kind of selections he's making, because I would imagine, from what I've seen from Chelsea, and I'm not saying there are things I've said that I don't want to regurgitate, because if I repeat them, then I might sound like a scratched CD. Because I've said repeatedly, they have no goalkeeper. And that I've insisted for several seasons. Roberto Sanchez and then Jorgensen are not the quality they want. Secondly, I've questioned their defense. Now, regardless in that situation, I would love Liam Rosinia to walk into games and choose the same back four for at least 4-5 games and give them a chance to fail or a chance to succeed. Now, what he's been doing lately, he goes in the game against PSG and selects the young boy they brought back on loan from France in January, Mamadou Sarr, who plays at centre back, and plays him with Wesley Fofana. Then a week later, it's Chalobah and someone else. The third goal for me is an embodiment of a player that Iliman Ndiaye is, because he's given an interview where he says that he sees things on a PlayStation and wants to try them out on the pitch.
Imagine.
But besides whatever Everton did, and Everton were excellent on both ends of the pitch. When they needed a save from Jordan Pickford, they got it. When they went forward, they were very efficient. Beto, who has not been very good in his 3 years at Everton, got 2 chances in that game and took both. The first was brilliant. But there's a lot of disorganization in Chelsea. You sense when the ball goes through the midfield, players are not aware they are standing. You have 2 defensive-minded midfielders, Moises Caicedo and Romeo Lavia. Lavia is playing in that position where Reece James has been. But they all look out of sync. There is a case, I think, with the second goal that is played through the channel, where Jarrell Hatter should be defending. And he's still very young. You can't criticize him too much. Maybe he'll develop. But when they play that ball into the channel, you almost sense there's no defensive midfielder there. Then the centre-back, who's supposed to be in that position, is also late. It looks like a bit of Sunday League players who have been brought together for a game. And many times Sunday League, the reward is a drink after the game. But we're talking millionaires. So you feel with every passing game, you feel Liam Rosinia is getting one call after the other wrong. But for me, for whatever is left of the season, and Chelsea must fight very hard to get into the Champions League. They still have an opportunity to get into the top 5, or top 4, top 5 eventually. For me, it has to start with just choosing 4 defenders and playing them for the rest of the season, and just see where it gets them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aston Villa back to winning ways. What have they done right? Because they had a couple of losses over the last couple of weeks.
I really loved their set-piece routine for their first goal. John McGinn, the goal that he scored, is played out from the corner and then goes outside the box. But between the corner and outside the box, I think there's 2 or 3 touches. before it gets to John McGinn. And every time I watch him, I remember a story I should tell in this point, even if it's irrelevant to the show. So the things we talk about, sports tourism, and when we get our sportsmen to those countries, what they could bring home. So remember, Tanzania has had a player at Aston Villa, Mbwana Samata. Also played at Simba, then went to TP Mazembe, went to Belgium, played for Racing Genk, and then made it to Aston Villa. I think these days he's playing in Turkey or back to Belgium, wherever he is. So I watched a story of John McGinn. His first visit to Africa was because he was having a conversation with Mbwana Samata, and Samata told him of a country where he comes from. And he told him, I come from a country called Tanzania. So McGinn asked him, what is there to do in Tanzania? Then he told him about the safari, where people end up in Serengeti or go to Mountain Kilimanjaro. Because of that, what Samata told McGinn visited Africa for the first time with his family and chose to go to Tanzania because of Samata. And that is money that came into the economy. So every time I watch him, I remember that story. I would always imagine if, let's say, Alan Okello or Travis Mutiaba made it to Manchester United, wouldn't he really have a conversation with Bruno Fernandes
and say, come
that
on,
takes them to Wind Impenetrable to see the Gorillas? Because these guys are always looking out for
things to do.
a holiday, somewhere at the end of the year, and they've been to Ibiza, they've been to Dubai, they've been to Miami, they've been to what other holiday? Hawaii. What holiday destination is very popular? All these
Maldives,
and Maldives, they are thinking about for something new, and that's how John McGinn ended up visiting Tanzania. But anyway, that's not why he scored. That's not why Villa won the game. They won 2-0, and I thought they just strangled West Ham all the way. Eventually got a second. Oli Watkins, very important result, because Villa have been having very big issues. They do not win games. Unai Emery has been in a bit of a decline, but now they have a bit of a gap between them and the teams that are chasing them for the Champions League spot. They've fallen from the sky of being somewhere fighting for the title, and now they are fighting to stay in Europe, which would still be a very good achievement if they are able to gain the Champions League again, because that would be twice in the Champions League in 3 years, and Villa have not done that for a very long time. So Unai Emery would have performed very, very well. This was a very important result, and actually it comes on a weekend when Chelsea and Liverpool do not win.
Yeah.
So that makes it even much more important.
I don't know if you would say United dropped points, but they drew with Bournemouth. Yeah.
I think under the circumstances they dropped points because they considered an equalizer very late. The penalty that was handed to Bournemouth. And also United could have issues with that, because before that they should have had a penalty of their own in the Bournemouth box. And maybe that leaves a very bad taste. And I saw Michael Carrick really trying not to criticize the referees, but you could almost sense the frustration that they must have felt they had enough, especially after they took the lead when Bruno Fernandes scored. But then they gave one equalizer, and they still got a second goal and still gave it away. But I was also looking at a bit of the numbers. Maybe Bournemouth should be given a bit of credit of being Man United's bogey side, because one, this is 6 games in a row that United cannot pick a result. Remember, there was also, I think, a 4-4. Yeah, not too long ago between the sides. Then, now they are also unbeaten in 11 in their last 11 league games. Actually, the last time they lost a league game was to Arsenal in January. So they've done very well in terms of resuscitating their season, because it had gone a bit stale and stagnant. But they brought in some young players. I think the Brazilian playing off the right, Ryan, should have actually scored a goal in that game. Some of the decision making you could excuse because he's still a teenager. But there's also an opportunity that failed to. I also think the other kid who is coming, Krupi. I hope I pronounced the name right. The French guy. He's also resuscitated that team, because they look to have gone stale after the kind of changes they've made to the squad. They've sold some of their better players, and now they've struggled to find the balance between defense and attack after losing Den Hussein, who went to Real Madrid, and then Zambanyi, who is at PSG. So it's been very difficult to find that balance. And actually, before these 2 goals against United that Andoni Iraiola's team got, they are not scored in their previous two because they had drawn both games 0-0. So they've taken quite a beating because of their effort to try and defend better after losing their defenders. And I didn't even mention Milos Kakes at Liverpool. They've tried to find that balance again. Now, when they found the balance, the goals have disappeared quite a bit. And that's why I thought for them scoring twice was very important. But United, they might feel aggrieved because of the refereeing. But the season for me has been, there's been a total revival under Michael Carrick. And I've declared on this show that I think they'll finish in the top 3. They'll make the Champions League. But also that is down to the fact that we don't know when the next time Chelsea and Liverpool win a game of football. Yeah, we cannot bet on that. And if you look at the running, if you're a Liverpool fan, be even more scared because the running is much tougher for Liverpool because they have to play United, they have to play Chelsea, they have to play Aston Villa, and these are teams they are competing with. So their games actually, I've always made a reference that there are games where you could play well and still lose. These are the kind of games where Liverpool can play well and still lose. And this one we don't know when Liverpool play well.
Okay.
Yeah, you can make minor references. The game against Real Madrid, the first leg may be against Aston Villa, then you make a reference to Galatasaray. But these are few and far between. It's a bit like drops in the ocean. That in the end, for United who have won the bulk of their last 8 games, they are more likely to stumble over the line than Liverpool will.
Injuries, Lisandro and Dogu are, I think, should be back.
After the international break.
Yeah.
And both of them, by the time they got injured, they had become very central to what United were doing.
So that will work in their favor.
Especially Patrick Dogu, I think, there had also been a lot of positive reviews and people who feel maybe was underutilized or the position was not the position was being given to play at the time was not very good. Playing as a left wing back or as a left back, when they put him in that position where we saw Nico Riley perhaps affect games before this Carabao Cup final, he looked very effective in that area. And I think for everything that United might have, and they have so many central defenders, their pace partnership this season has looked a bit like Lisandro Martinez and Harry Maguire.
Okay.
So to have them back, I think at this stage of the season is also a very good thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now let's talk on the other end of the table. I mean, we saw Tottenham in Europe score 5 last week, and then against Forest,
concede 5. Score 5 over 2 legs.
Yeah.
Over the 2 legs.
Yes.
Yeah, over the 2 legs, because they scored 2 in Spain and then 3 at that stadium.
And against Forest, I mean, it's actually looking very real that Tottenham Hotspur.
Maybe I've warned you several times. But one of the things that will stick with me, if eventually Tottenham get relegated,
the money they'll lose.
No, not the money. I have a lot of personal stories about many things. So while in Morocco, I met a Sierra Leone people. What are people from Sierra Leone called?
I was going to say Creole, but Sierra Leonean, I think.
Sierra Leonean. There's a lady called Loretta. Her parents came from Sierra Leone, but she was born in London. She told me she lives around South London, where Crystal Palace play their football. So she traveled and went to watch Tottenham last season, when this stadium was still maybe the tourist attraction. They are big stadiums. So when we were in Morocco, we went to the Prince Moulay Abdallah Stadium in Rabat, where the final of the AFCON was played between Senegal and Morocco, or where Morocco played all their games at the AFCON. And the first thing she told me when she looked at that stadium in Rabat said, wow, this stadium is as good and as beautiful as the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Now I'm imagining a stadium of that size in the Championship would be quite a sight. Would be quite a sight, because when you get relegated, your revenues, and just start with the funds, are cut by 2/3. 2/3 of the funds don't go to watch Championship games. Only 1/3 of the funds stay.
Aren't they cheaper though?
They are cheaper, but what's the motivation? To go and watch Tottenham against Wrexham or Tottenham against Queen's Park Rangers? Okay, that's a London derby maybe. But Fans
You
clearly.
may see their celeb owners.
Even
Americans.
a team as big as Juventus, who are relegated in 2006,
Middlesbrough.
yeah, Middlesbrough, they've struggled to get back to those heights. When they had the Riverside, it was packed everything. But even a team which is bigger than Tottenham and Middlesbrough in Juventus struggled in that season. They were in the Italian Serie B, 2006-2007, after they were relegated after the Calciopoli, yeah, the match-fixing investigation in Italy. So every time I imagine Tottenham, I look back at how big this thing is, and it's going back in the championship. But here is for me the healing grace for Tottenham. Sack Igor Tudor today, you have a chance of staying in the league.
So he's the problem.
Because, not that he's the problem, he has no clue. The problem is much bigger. And by the way, in life, let's be very careful what we wish for. There are two things that also have come to me, and I'm going to get back to Igor Tudor. Is that when Alan Kabishli was coaching Charlton, they were in the league for 12 seasons and was a coach for 12 years. Charlton Athletic fans start saying that the club is not ambitious enough and Alan Kabishli is only there to keep them in the league. If you've watched your Premier League analysis, you've seen Kabishli on television.
Yeah.
He's in his 60s now. Kabishli walks away from Charlton. None of us even knows where the division where they're playing. We do not know the division where they're playing. Secondly, in the recent past, we've all seen protests and fans accusing Daniel Levy of the stagnation of Tottenham Hotspur. He walks away, and his family has not yet sold his share, but he resigns as chairman, and within just 6 to 7 months, the club is going under. Under Levy, it never happened. It never happened. Tottenham were playing Champions League football. They were at least competing to a certain level, even if they were not winning. So everyone says Daniel Levy is a problem because the club is not ambitious enough. He's gone. So in life, I've always, there's a friend of mine, and you know, one of the discussions we have in Uganda is about how we can make more money. There's a friend of mine, Abdul Nasser Semugabe, and I've said on this show that we have more conversation with him than I have with many other people. And he always tells me that while you pray for money and wish for more money, always hope that when God gives you that money, he also does not bring you new problems.
Like
because
health issues.
Like health issues, like all these other, or thieves. You could get money and get beaten. Yeah, and die. Yeah, and it's that simple. You could get money today and suffer cancer tomorrow. And all these resources you've attained are drained. So in the case of Tottenham, be careful what you wish for. Levy is gone, the club is going down under. But now back to Igor Tudor. He has no clue. Yes, they have so many injuries and they've been there the entire season. But even that grit that you need in that kind of situation, he does not seem to have an idea what is happening. And I also feel that sometimes when you get to this kind of situation where Tottenham are, maybe you need players who are schooled in that fight. There are players who are made for that. And now it's the second season in a row, and Tottenham have no clue what to do. Then I watched the game, and let me confirm those substitutions, because I was mad. I was very, very mad at the substitutions that he made. They were already a goal down, yeah, to
Forest.
Not to Forest.
Yeah.
So they're goal down, and here are the substitutions that he makes. And I looked at them, and my mind was, I was stunned that in his mind, okay, the first substitution that he made with a goal down, he brought on Destin Udogi, the left back, and also brought on Lucas Bagval. Bagval was playing his first game since January. Yet what was lacking at the time is that they're not challenging the Nottingham Forest defense. So in my mind, I'm saying bring on Javi Simons and Conor Gallagher, because Gallagher at least will carry the ball and Javi Simons will try to pass and get the ball into the final third and probably get Richarlison and Dominic Solanke involved. And then I sit there thinking, come on, Tudor. When I watched you, you're not a very good player. When I've watched you coach, you're not a very good coach. But you cannot also be this bad. Yeah? And eventually, if they get relegated, Igor Tudor is one of those that is going to be blamed. But for me, there's an entire structural problem. And now the players are shell-shocked.
Yeah.
First of all, they've never played. Because you look at these players, okay, Matthias Tel has been at Bayern Munich. All these other players have been at big clubs, or they played at not Tottenham. and they've never been in a relegation fight. So even they have no clue. For me, this is a point where you sack Tudo and hire a Sam Allardyce clone, not necessarily Allardyce, but they are managers who are schooled in that area. These Sean Dykes, who know they would come into a situation, first of all, make the defense
Sean
as
Dyche
solid.
is actually available, isn't he?
He is.
He's available.
And I'm not even thinking of him as mine because I also think he's terrible. But at least you'd hire a coach who you know they'll set up the defense and ensure that they'll actually first set up not to lose a game of football. Then thereafter, maybe they'll score through a corner or a free kick and escape that. Now with Ugo Tudo, they are not doing anything right. And their next game, I look at, I really fear. I really fear.
I remember someone once saying it's no longer Tottenham Hotspur, it's Tottenham Cold Spur.
Cold Spur. Cold Spur's next game is away at Sunderland. Can you imagine if they go to Sunderland and lose?
And it's very possible.
Very possible. Sunderland won the Tyne and Weir derby.
Yeah.
Away at Newcastle. Okay, they have Newcastle's number. They've won 8 of the last 9 Tyne and Weir derbies. But if that happens and West Ham win their next game, Tottenham will be in the bottom 3.
Unbelievable.
And if they are, it's very hard to get out. Just as Wolves and Burnley.
I know, and yet Wolves have really put up a fight
you
now. They are fighting.
Yeah, you improve your performances, you improve your results, but sometimes it's too late.
It's too late.
And that's my biggest fear for Tottenham at this point. I think if Ugo Tudo coaches the next 2 games after international break, they are gone. They would actually, if they have to stand a chance, this international break should be an opportunity for them to get rid of the coach and bring these coaches we call mechanica, just so that the mechanic sorts out things in the interim, 3-4 games, and you win 2 of those. You survive, then you sort out everything else next season.
Okay. Let's now come here to Uganda, the rugby that was played at Wankulukuku, the Enterprise Cup. It didn't go too well for Ugandan teams.
Yeah.
So does that still lend credence to the notion that it's a Kenyan, it's more Kenyan?
It's always been very Kenyan. After it's the Kenyans who started it back in 1924, and it's been here forever. And even in the seasons when Ugandan club sides do not play in the Enterprise Cup, it does happen in Kenya. So this year, because of a relationship that has grown again, because this relationship between Kenya and Uganda in sport goes back a very long way. And maybe part of it is because of the economics. It's cheaper to play Kenya than anyone else. And I've seen videos of games between Kenya and Uganda from the 1950s and in the rugby. And some of these were largely, when they tell you the Ugandan team, they are white, and the Kenyan team are also white. And they are playing the rugby. And I've seen, for example, in the football, the idea we have of a CAF Senior Challenge Cup also started as a Kenya-Uganda affair back in 1956, which was a Gossage Cup. There was a British gentleman called Gossage, who was trying to start a soap company, and wanted to sell to both Kenya and Uganda. So the best way to promote his tournament was to have Kenya and Uganda play a football game, which was named Gossage Cup, and then eventually the soap would move around in the market. So it's been cheaper in that sense. So that's how the Enterprise Cup comes to be. Kenya started, and then Uganda joined. But only one Ugandan side won. Only one. I would start with language that is not very good. And this is where we put 18. Because Toyota Buffaloes were molested in Nakuru by Menengai Oilers. Cobs were beaten by nondescripts. Platinum Credit Heathens were beaten by Cabra Sugar at Wankulukuku. And then eventually, Stanbic Bank Pirates were the saving grace that Ugandan Rugby ordered because they won their game 11-10. The tension for this one, goodness. Pirates started well against a very aggressive team, the KCB Rugby, like it's called, from Kenya, but eventually Pirates just doing enough. And part of it for me is down to their bench strength, because when you have Desire Era and Haruna Mohammed coming off a bench, that helps you quite a lot in terms of what you can do, because the scorelines that you'll see that Cobs conceded and Buffalo's conceding 60, Heathens shipping as much as 50, were down to when they started making the substitutions. Then the quality of the players coming off a bench was not the same, so the score took a nosedive. I think for Pirates, their bench strength came to the fore, and that's how they were able to get the kind of scoreline they did, 11-10. So big congratulations, Pirates, for saving Uganda by staying in the Enterprise Cup.
Okay, now for our cricket cranes, are they also saving us in Namibia?
By the time you're able to watch this show, the cricket cranes will have played as many as 4 games, because they played 3 T20s, and those T20 series, Uganda lost 2 and won 1. But by the time we came on air, they had they were playing Namibia in their first ODI, and let me just see what the score was at the point. Uganda had shipped in, I remember it was 286 for 8, but the 50 overs now must be done. They conceded 303 for 8, and Uganda in reply were 44 for 4 by the time we are filming this. So ordinarily they are losing that ODI too. And for me, the eternal issues about batting return, and that's what I've questioned. But also you could give Uganda cricketers, or Cricket Uganda like it's called these days, and the coach Steve Tikol a bit of credit. They've carried a lot of young players to Namibia in the hope that they will build some of the bench strength. Yeah, that when they gave these players a bit of time to play, Charles Musemeza, Joseph Baguma, Matthew Musinguzi, Gerard Olipa, they are hoping that they get tested at this stage, and then they will have options in case some of the first team players are not playing as well as they should. So it's an opportunity, but so far in terms of scores, it's being wasted. And for me, that is the bigger worry for Cricket Uganda.
Okay. Going on to the NBA, we'll be talking about the playoffs. But before we do, let's talk about Lebron James. I remember we've talked about him before, the show we used to do a while ago.
I have in my notes.
And I remember you saying at that time the trajectory that LeBron James was on, it was no surprises then.
That he would retire with all kinds of records.
Exactly. And now he broke another one over the weekend.
And this one should be for the number of regular season games played.
1,000 something?
I need to put the actual number to that, because when I was making my notes for this show, I had LeBron James somewhere, but I had just that he now has a record for most number of regular season games played. Because when you play 21 seasons and already the all-time leading scorer, you played the most minutes, you played the most of everything, to the extent that, just to emphasize how long he's been here, you're going to find even the rebound numbers, even the assist numbers is right there in the top. But he also has the highest number of turnovers in the history of the NBA. Just to emphasize, he has all the best records and even the worst, which would be the turnovers. But I just want to confirm
even
that number of games.
Even has his son playing with him.
Yeah,
something that has never happened.
Yeah, the first two father-son duo in the NBA, though. But anyway, in that game where Luke Kennard scored a buzzer-beating shot to beat the Orlando Magic, LeBron James played his 1,612th NBA regular season game. The record had been held by Robert Parrish, and it goes back to 1997. Robert Parrish played 1,611 games. That's what LeBron has been doing.
Is he like a Ronaldo who has this 1,000 goals and he's like, everything that there is to break, I'm going to break it?
Sometimes I'm thinking he's achieved as much as he could. To be honest, besides the interview where he said that he still enjoys basketball, I don't know what he's chasing. Because 15 years ago when he joined Miami Heat, and that should have been 2011, he gave an interview and he said, we are not here to win 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7. And at the time, of course, the reference between Lebron was always a comparison with Michael Jordan, which will never go away. And Michael Jordan won 6 NBA titles, never lost a final. Lebron, I think, has been to 10 finals and lost 6 of those. But he's not going to catch the ghost. Yeah, the ghost that is Michael Jordan, because he no longer has the time. For me, no longer has the time to go on a run where Lakers will get into a finals and he wins and gets to the 6 NBA rings. That's not going to happen. So,
even if he joins one of the top clubs.
But also, the NBA transfer does not work that way.
Okay.
It's not possible for him, for example, to wake up tomorrow and end up at OKC. The teams are built. Actually, for a country that is as capitalist as America, American sport is the only chance where they are socialist. That the worst team in the NBA will get the best player coming out of high school. So it does not work the same way, because if it was about the money, the Lakers, who are one of the most profitable franchises and probably the most valuable today, would be able to bring that. Or the Dallas Cowboys, who are the richest team in the world and have not won a Super Bowl since 1995, would be able.
What about when they bring in these Europeans?
Still, you still have to manage the salary cap and all these things. It's a lengthy story. And I see people who go to our comments every time and ask about the NBA. I don't know whether they want only what happens on the pitch or the detail of what goes into an NBA trade deadline and all those kind of things. But more importantly, right now, Lebron has broken his record, and his Lakers are not far away from clinching a playoff position. They've won 46 and 25 in the West and lie third. So by the end of this week, should be able to make it to the playoffs, to clinch their playoff position. In the West, 2 teams have done that. The champions, Oklahoma City Thunder, for whom we don't know when SGA will be able to stop scoring 20 points in a game. They've clinched their playoff position. So have the San Antonio Spurs and Victor Wembanyama. They're also through. And then in the East, the Detroit Pistons have also clinched their spot in the playoffs. And hopefully, the Boston Celtics, who have had Jason Tatum return from injury, should also be able to make it there very quickly. But we're at the stage where I want to test your math. 56 plus 15.
56 plus 15.
71. That should be 71. So it's just 11 games at the end of the season, the regular season, then we get the playoffs. So the regular season is almost at its conclusion. Then the real season for me starts.
For this section, Isma, why should we
care?
Yes, we are asking, why should we care about the Uganda Marketers Society tour?
So I was somewhere and I received a message of a story that I think has not got the kind of importance that it deserves. We're a country that are very good at complaining and never providing solutions. And one of the things we complain about, many of us in the sports subsector, the sports industry, journalism or players or anything, is how sports does not attract money. So there is a gentleman, I think is the head of the commercial manager of the Uganda Premier League. He did something that I thought was beautiful on the outside. I went to see what is on the inside. He's part of that Uganda Marketeers Society, where these marketing executives across the country or across Kampala come together. So he did something and introduced and asked the people in the Marketeers Society to go and see what the Uganda Premier League actually does, in the hope that these marketing managers of these organizations will sink some money either into the UPL or the clubs. So he took them on a tour. They toured the Ham Stadium in Nachivubo. They toured the Chira Arena where police do play their games. They went to the KCC MTN Omondi Stadium where KCC play their games. And also they went to Namboli. I thought, while the idea on the outside looks very beautiful, and maybe it looks like an idea with cosmetics, it's a very good start. One of the toughest things I've realized, and I've had an interaction with people who are in the sports sphere, it's very difficult to sell sports in this country. Very, very difficult. So I thought that the idea in itself is very good. So what the UPL Secretariat and the clubs do with the contacts, with the marketing managers who have come and visited these venues, do with them hereafter is up to them. But I thought it's a story that went under the bridge but deserved a lot more attention than it got.
Okay. Another thing, why should we care about the CAF championships?
Now, this for me is one of the things that remind me about how unfortunate we are as a continent. This week, the CAF Champions League and the CAF Confederations Cup have reached their quarter-final stage. But the discussion across the African continent is a trophy awarded in the boardroom. Yet, there's been some exceptional football that has been played. The CAF Champions League quarterfinals were concluded over the weekend, and for Ugandan bias, Denis Onyang and Mamelodi Sundowns are through. They managed to knock out Stade Malien of Mali. They won the first leg by 3-0 and lost the return encounter by 2-0. Eventually also had a man sent off. Sundowns had a man sent off. So we should have been discussing that, but we are discussing Morocco and Senegal. Those are the things that administrators at CAF and all these organizations do without realizing. In addition, the champions of Africa from the last season were knocked out. Pyramids were knocked out by ASFA. The Africa's greatest team, Al Ahly, which is an admiration of everywhere all of us would want to go in life, or what football should be, were also knocked out by Esperance of Tunisia. And then the final team in the semi-final is RS Berkane. So it's Esperance against Sundowns, and ASFA, which is a team which would call the army side of Morocco, will be playing against RS Berkane of Morocco. So one of the things that happened to us, and this I always remind administrators, and I've told the one I can get to very easily, Moses Magogo, whose phone number I have in my phone and whose home I know, is that every time we spend a lot of time, administrators trying to be the stars of a game, these are the things we lose. You have an African competition,
happening.
The CAF Champions League, which also provides the teams that go to the FIFA Club World Cup, happening, but administrators have decided that let the discussion be Morocco versus Senegal. It's very sad and very unfortunate.
Okay, and then why should we care about the third race of the Formula One, the Japanese Grand Prix?
That's largely because it wouldn't be the third race. It would have been the fourth. Because we've already seen the season start in Australia, in Melbourne, and then we saw also the second race in China. Ordinarily, Formula One this week would be moving to Saudi Arabia and Bahrain. That's what we'll be discussing. But because Israel and USA decided that they are the police of the world, they decide to bomb Iran. Iran retaliates by attacking the Middle East, where the US and Israel have their interests, especially the USA. So there's hardly any sport happening in the Middle East. I've only seen the Saudis have insisted their league, the Saudi Pro League is on.
But Ronaldo left, didn't he?
Yeah, because of an injury. He said he has an injury. That's why he's back home in Portugal.
Safety.
He hasn't said safety, but I would imagine it's a bit of safety. Because the other week I was watching a game between Al Hilal and Al Ahly. Al Hilal is the strong, the biggest team in Saudi. Then Al Ahly, a Saudi side that also won the Champions League, the team that has Ivan Toney, the former Brentford striker, and Riyad Mahrez. They play for that Al Ahly side. They wear green and Al Hilal wear blue. It was a King's Cup game, and eventually Al Hilal won that.
For the final thing on why we should care, or why should we care, the third race of Formula One, the Japanese Grand Prix, happening 27th, I think?
It starts 27th, which should be
month.
Friday. Yeah. Some people think Formula One happens on Sunday, but in actual sense, it starts on Friday. It starts on March 27th. But ordinarily, this would have been the fifth race of the year.
The fifth, yeah.
So we've already lost two. After Australia and China, we've lost Saudi Arabia and Bahrain. Because the US and Israel think they have values, and they also think they should be the police of the world, decided to invade Iran. And then the retaliation, and Iran has gone after Gulf countries that are friendly to the US. And now we've lost 2 races already. And of course, sport has lost a lot. 2 races are gone. And then you think about the finalisma that was supposed to happen in Doha between Spain and Argentina will not happen. So this week, Argentina in the international break will be playing against Mauritania and Zambia in Buenos Aires.
Spain want to travel?
Spain had actually agreed to so many of the terms, including to play home and away. There was actually even an option to play the game as a 1 leg in Italy, which Argentina rejected. Then they were given an option to play home and away, which Argentina agreed to, but then they asked for a different date. I think they wanted the second leg to be played on, should have been 28th and 31st. They wanted different dates that UEFA and FIFA could offer. So eventually Argentina say they pull out, and the finalism has not happened. And you can imagine how much money has been lost for the ticketing and all.
Now there's a Zambia in there.
Yeah,
Will
so they've
people
invited
pay as
Zambia and
much?
No, the game will be in Argentina. And luckily for them, these 2 games between Mauritania and Zambia, which are African countries, are going to be a bit like farewell to the Argentina side before they go to the World Cup. So it's benefit for Mauritania and Zambia.
Yeah.
And people in Buenos Aires get a chance to see Messi, yeah, who can cause a riot. He's caused one in India before, yeah. For one of those, even he agreed to a game, and then eventually he was injured and couldn't play, and people were rioting in the streets because of that. So sport has lost so much, but eventually the 3rd race of the Formula 1 season will be happening in Japan, and not Saudi or Bahrain as would have happened. So we look forward to seeing what Mercedes will be doing on that track in Suzuka.
And the 19-year-old last time
Kimi Antonelli.
who won.
So when you watch his stories, you almost want to feel like a teenager again.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, that's all we had for you this week on IDK. Isma Dakabachigongo, Second Take, as we bring you, real analysis behind the sports news. Remember to share, like, comment, and subscribe above all else. And we thank you all for the numerous subscriptions. Let's keep pushing those numbers. Do take care of yourselves, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Are you tired of the daily hustle and bustle, the endless traffic just to get your little one to a good school? GMS Bingo offers a unique blend of academic excellence with a holistic child development in both nursery and primary. We provide a national curriculum with an international touch. Enroll your child today by visiting our campus along Trinity College Nabingo Road. GMS Bingo, where every child's potential is a reality. Because we care.